when things are happening that are very confusing and very difficult and nobody is explaining to me what is happening and I'm very confused, there is one of two reactions autistic people have. Either I shut myself up. I'm quiet, or I express myself externally by maybe harming others, the environment, or harming myself. Now, if I'm the kind of person who shuts myself up, the world says, देखो कितना अच्छा है, चुपचाप रहता है. And if I'm the person who externalizes, then I'm a bad person. The one who externalizes, of course, gets labeled bad, and often a lot of bad things happen with them behaviorally when people try to handle that behaviorally. But the ones who internalize, sometimes they have a worse situation because nobody understands what they are going through. And you keep hearing about mental health problems in adolescence and adulthood or outbursts happening then. It's because they have been internalizing. That is what is happening. And that is really what people don't understand. That when I internalize, then I get labeled as this nice guy. But nobody knows what is happening inside me.
Yeah.
And this is something parents need to understand also.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the India Autism Center podcast. Today, we are here in Goa at the Purple Fest 2025, and I have with me somebody who has changed autism in India, who's transformed so many lives. Mary Barua, the founder of Action for Autism, and somebody who's also been a friend and a mentor to me. I've known her since I was a kid. Thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Mary, there are a lot of topics that, we can talk about because you've done so much work on autism through AFA and in individual capacity and as a mother. But I thought it might be fun to talk about the private sector and employment with you today in this particular episode.
Okay.
There was a new act which came up in 2016. It's been close to 10 years now since that act has come up. Autism has been recognized since even way before that, of course. But on the ground, in the private sector, has life changed for people with autism when it comes to employment?
I would say that it has taken the first step in maybe a million steps.
Okay.
That's where we really are at. Despite the celebration that happens in the media, there are corporates that are making an effort to employ neurodivergent employees, autistic employees, but they are really a very, very tiny number, and they're a smattering. Some companies may have 2 people, some may have 12, some may have 20, but nobody has reached 3 digits. They're all in the low 2 digits, right? And this is after many of these companies for years talking about including autistic people in their workforce.
And why do you think the scale is not coming in?
See, what happens is that when you have somebody who's autistic, just like for any disability, you will have to make certain changes in what I would say universal design, right? But very often universal design is only seen as physical infrastructure, which it is not. It is also systems. It is modes of communication, right? It is all of that. And that is where companies are not able to, willing, whichever way you put it, do it. Because very often what that means is changing our mindset. Because we have become a country where we are more willing to make, I won't say very widely, but at least at some level, adaptations. If we feel somebody is a little different, we may try to make an effort if we can obviously see that. But the thing with autism is it's an invisible disability. And as it happens with invisible disabilities, there is an inability or lack of acceptance also, and that is as true of parents as is it of employees or schools, right? To understand that this person has a different way of processing, and I may have to make accommodations for that. And in employment, I'll give you some simple examples. For instance, if I'm somebody who's autistic and I prefer to get my instructions over email, rather than somebody calling me 5 times and verbally telling me what to do. And I make that request, but it is not accepted. all it needs is you're on the computer all the time anyway. Just send off an email, right?
Right.
But I'm not willing to do that. I'll keep calling that person 10 times, which is very overwhelming, right? There could be somebody who says that I need a quieter space to work. Why do you need to sit in that corner? Everybody's sitting here and working, you do the same. I would say, I know one company, at least I can't remember, and I can't take names, who has, one of the people we worked with, who has made accommodation for somebody at the end of the open workspace where there is no light, he sits in the corner and works. Because that's easier for him. That didn't take a great deal of effort. So the thing is that to accept that the person may have different ways of processing, may need different ways to be given information, and to understand that everything they do is not bad behavior. Supposing if I have cerebral palsy and I have spasticity along with that, right? So when I'm speaking, my hand might keep jerking. I'm not being rude and jerking my hand while I'm talking to you, and we accept that. But an autistic person, when I'm speaking, I may need to look away. This happened with my son yesterday. When he was meeting people, he just couldn't look at anyone. He was very overwhelmed. He kept looking away. With a lot of autistic people, the minute they look away, even though they've been told about this, I mean, so arrogant, doesn't even bother to look when he's speaking. These are the things. And these lead to challenges because your immediate supervisor makes a complaint. Nobody wants to find out what it is. Nobody understands in the organization, right? And very often the NGO that is supporting you also doesn't quite understand. So there is nobody there to really take the side of this other guy and say that he was not being rude. He just was very overwhelmed today and therefore was finding it hard to look at you. How does it matter if he's doing the job? So there are a whole host of things that leads to these difficulties.
And I think an attitudinal change is the first step.
It is. See, I keep saying that in universal design, the most challenging is understanding the things that we have to do in the environment. That is the most important one, the attitudinal change.
But if a company comes to Action for Autism and says we want to become autism-friendly, could you walk me through what all do you do to...
We do. There are a lot of companies who come and say they want a talk and stuff like that. So we do the talk, but it doesn't always translate into employment, right? But of course, we would go and do an awareness talk to them about what it really means to be neurodivergent. What are the simple things? I have to say this, that I don't think I should take any names, but there is one hospitality company that really makes an effort.
If somebody's doing something positive, I think you can name it.
Okay, Lemon Tree.
Right.
They really make an effort because they started off, not very certain. And when we've asked for changes, and there have been times when something has happened with one of our people, we've gone and said that this is what has happened. And this is the reason why it has happened. They've made the effort to bring about changes. Of course, in hospitality, one of the challenges is, as in some other companies, your supervisors keep changing. They get shifted from one, and not everybody may have been sensitized. So those lead to trouble. Since it was one of the first ones we started with, and I've seen how much effort that they put in to try to really understand, take on board, call a meeting to say, why did this happen? We have to do something about it. Whereas we know that with many companies, we've had a lot of trouble trying to get that meeting and take place, and eventually had to tell our guy that, you'll just have to drop out. There's nothing we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
I also interact with a lot of NGOs on a daily basis because of the work that I do. And I'm seeing a lot of autism NGOs specifically coming up that focus on two things. And I'm glad you mentioned hotel change, because hospitality is one thing. And the other is in quality departments, because they say that, and I think this is a stereotype that people with autism are good at identifying patterns. And perhaps a lot of them are. Autism is also such a spectrum. And I think when you start looking at just two industries, you're also not looking at the individual in that sense. So what is your response to that, to autism-based organizations also that are working on skilling and just focus on two industries in that sense?
It's not that hospitality and quality control is the only thing they can do. Yes, they are very good at identifying patterns. That's true. That is one of the reasons why they're also very good at IT. Because that also is very, is very structured, well formatted, So it is true. But the thing is that when you only focus on that, then you're kind of limited. And I know that I've faced this difficulty because of, there is so much of this talk that happens that when, there is reservation in government jobs, So when there is a discussion happening, because we are identifying jobs, and I keep saying they could be doing any of the jobs that are there may be a few that they can't do. But they look at it the other way, that they can't do any of these. There are only some of these that relate with this that they do. And it's a big battle because they believe that if you're autistic, you really cannot do anything else but these kinds of jobs. So this is not really helping this kind of a narrative. It is not true at all. Yes, they are good at that, but that is not all they are good at. And yes, if somebody has not had the opportunity of completing their education, which a lot of them don't because schools are not willing to take them as yet, then I would say yes, because, get into a blue collar job. But if they have completed their education, then why are we only looking at these two? We should look at something more. I absolutely agree. It should not be, it has become a kind of a stereotype, and that can hold the sector back.
Could you talk about few role models who finished their education and are excelling?
Yeah, there are a lot of them. I don't know if I can take all their names because we have a lot of them who work with us, who come to us for counseling. Some of them who are on our boards also. We have Rakshita Shekhar. She's trained as a special educator, and though she just went off to Germany, she'll come back to India.
She's a person with autism herself?
Yeah, she's autistic. Her husband moved there, so she moved and she's working somewhere there. We have on our team members, we have Sudhanshu Grover. She was actually what did she work on? She was a microbiologist or something. She has two autistic kids, so she shifted to autism. She's now a specialist in autism. She's a self-autistic, and she counsels neurodivergent individuals and stuff like that. There are a whole lot of others we know lawyers, journalists. For instance, News Laundry had this journalist. I don't think he's with them now. I can't remember his name. He's autistic. So there is a whole lot of them who are around. So there are many who are in different professions. There are professors. There are people in management. So they can do all kinds of jobs because autism is a spectrum, right? And therefore, it's not that if I have autism, I can only do this or I cannot do that. I could be doing anything. It depends on how my autism interacts with the world around me, right? That's what determines it.
When a parent learns that their child has got diagnosed with autism, etc., how should they prepare to ensure that the child can live up to the child's maximum capacity? Right. Because sometimes we get into this protective trap as well, right?
Yeah. See, I would say the first thing a parent should be doing is understand autism and understand your child. Because until and unless you understand autism deeply, you will be very much in the mode of behavior. Even we, 10 years back, we used to do these workshops on challenging behavior. We don't do it anymore because what they have are not challenging behaviors. We call them behaviors of protest. Those are behaviors that are protesting to what the environment is doing to them, right? And until you understand autism, you tend to interpret everything from this very, bad behavior which needs to be changed perspective. It is only when you really understand autism, you'll be able to understand your child and understand why my child is throwing himself on the floor and crying. No, it's not because he wants the chocolate. He's throwing himself on the floor and crying maybe because you said we will leave this place after 5 minutes. And after 20 minutes, you are still sitting here and he does not know how to say, why haven't we left? It could be something as simple as that, because even if my child has a lot of speech, he may not be able to communicate and ask this question. And the other challenge that happens, a very simple one that I want to mention is, if there are lots of autistic children who do not speak, but there are many more now who speak, who are getting a diagnosis, and one or the other happens. If my child is not speaking, the usual assumption is that, there's nothing much that can be done, or I must work on getting the child to speak. Until that happens, nothing will happen. So there is this assumption that no speech means there is nothing. And the other one assumption is that if there is speech, then he knows and understands everything, and there are unreasonable expectations, right? Where you're not really understanding the autism. It would be like if I had this unreasonable expectation just because we are sitting here and speaking, and you seem to be sitting quite comfortably, you can just get up and come and tell me something. That would be an unreasonable expectation. With autism, there are unreasonable expectations if the child is speaking. And that comes when I don't understand my child and I don't. It comes from teachers, it comes from schools, it comes from people who are supporting them. This trying to understand autism from the space of autism is something that is not really prevalent in the country as yet. It's not. And that is what, if parents get themselves trained, there are lots, we do such trainings. I know Umid does such trainings. There are lots of organizations that do good early training for them to understand their child. Once that happens, your life is much easier. And there's one more thing I want to quickly mention. And this is important for parents as well as for professionals. See, when things are happening that are very confusing and very difficult and nobody is explaining to me what is happening and I'm very confused, there is one of two reactions autistic people have. Either I shut myself up. I quiet, or I express myself externally by maybe harming others, the environment, or harming myself. Now, if I'm the kind of person who shuts myself up, the world says, देखो कितना अच्छा है, चुपचाप रहता है. And if I'm the person who externalizes, then I'm a bad person. The one who externalizes, of course, gets labeled bad, and often a lot of bad things happen with them behaviorally when people try to handle that behaviorally. But the ones who internalize, sometimes they have a worse situation because nobody understands what they are going through. And you keep hearing about mental health problems in adolescence and adulthood or outbursts happening then. It's because they have been internalizing. That is what is happening. And that is really what people don't understand. That when I internalize, then I get labeled as this nice guy. But nobody knows what is happening inside me.
Yeah.
And this is something parents need to understand also.
No, I think that's a great learning for every parent in that sense, that you don't know what's bottling up. And
Yeah.
Mary, I've taken a lot of your time, but I want to ask you one final question that I've been asking all our guests. What do you think can the common citizen in this country do to make India a more equal opportunity country for people with disabilities in general?
Right. All I would say is be accepting of anyone who's different. Anybody, right? If you're accepting of differences, you'll be accepting of people with disabilities, right? And that is something we are really not. I mean, we keep saying that we are a country that has been so accepting and we've done this. We don't. Just the other day, I know this friend who's from the Northeast had a horrible experience. Being called, chinky, chinku chinku kaha ja raha hai? And this is in the capital, right? Now, if I cannot accept somebody who has high cheekbones, how do I, and I don't accept somebody who's dark skinned, I've seen that also, right? Somebody who's from the South who's very dark skinned and is constantly being called out. How do you expect people to accept people who are disabled? So if we really want to be better as a country and do better as a country, we have to be accepting of people who are different in any way, whether they're short-statured, whether they look different, whether they act different, whether they speak different, whether they eat different. Look at the kind of judgment of eating that is happening now. If you eat meat, if you eat this, 70% of the country are not vegetarians. 70% we are judging every day. Now, the more we do such judgment, the more difficult we make it for persons with disabilities. It will never happen. So we have to do better as a country and become more accepting. It doesn't matter how other people live, eat, walk, dress, look, behave, transport themselves, communicate. It doesn't matter. If that is not bothering me, why am I bothering them? So live and let live. If we do that, we will accept all disabilities.
Thank you so much, Mary. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Nipun. Pleasure as always.
Thank you.